Outside, the famous gray sky of Washington, D.C. casts a heavy shadow over the marble pillars of the federal courthouse. It is exactly 9:14 a.m. At the intersection of E Street and Constitution Avenue, life may be moving as usual, but behind the closed doors, just behind courtroom number 2, the greatest legal seismic shift in American history is taking place. Judge Elena Martinez has just placed her silver-framed glasses on her desk. The 114-page document sitting before her is not just a routine court order. It is a certificate of destruction for an imperial armor. The presidency is not a fortress, she writes on page 42, and the law does not kneel at the gates of that fortress. This ruling is the end of the great wait that has lasted for months. The absolute immunity shield that Donald Trump's legal team has carefully maintained is now shattered into 1,000 pieces by Martinez's pen. Pay very close attention now, because we aren't just talking about a case file here. We are talking about the end of the illusion of executive invincibility and the opening of a dark corridor leading directly to the defendant's chair. To understand how we reached this point, we need to look into the dusty but dangerous law libraries of Washington. For months, Trump's lawyers treated Article 2 of the Constitution like a sacred text. In their view, every decision made within the White House was categorized as an official act and was therefore immune from judicial review. The defense's thesis was simple. If you prosecute a president for his actions in office, you destroy the authority of the seat itself. But the evidence placed on the table by the special counsel showed that the matter had evolved into something far darker than mere politics. The files detailing secret coordinations, plans to interfere with the will of the voters, and abuses of power pointed in Martinez's eyes to a personal power operation rather than presidential duty. Imagine the heavy silence in that courtroom. On one side, a defense pushing the extreme limits of the unitary executive theory. On the other, an unshakable federal will declaring no one is above the law. This was not just a legal debate. It was the judiciary's response to a cyber attack on the operating system of American democracy. In her ruling, Judge Martinez cited one of the oldest rules of American law, lex non arrege est violanda, the law shall not be violated by the king, and that sentence dislodged the first major brick in the defensive wall that Trump's legal team had spent months building. The tension leaked out of the courthouse and seeped into the deep veins of the federal bureaucracy. Minutes before the ruling was announced, phones in the corridors of the Department of Justice and the FBI did not stop ringing. While pro-Trump lawyers were preparing an emergency application to the Supreme Court, Judge Martinez made a completely unexpected move. She did not just reject the defense's request for a stay, freezing the process. She placed the trial calendar directly in the heart of the election cycle. This was a moment that could be described in legal history as a meltdown. For the defense team, time was more valuable than property. While they tried to push the process past the election, the court left them with only one option. You will either be tried or you will lose your authority. This is where everything changes. Whispers began to rise in the backrooms of Washington. It was reported that major cracks had formed within Trump's legal team, with some lawyers considering withdrawal for fear of professional suicide. Because Martinez's ruling did not just reject immunity, it also characterized the aggressive stance taken by the lawyers in the courtroom as an attack on judicial authority. Look at the big picture. If Martinez has opened this door, it means the floodgates have opened for cases in other states as well. This ruling is not just a case file. It is the most critical front in the legal siege surrounding Trump's political future. And then, the critical moment. The final paragraph of the 114-page text. Martinez officially declared that the claim of absolute immunity for defendant Donald J. Trump had no legal basis whatsoever. The vital finding in the text is of a caliber that will go down in American judicial history. The presidency is a duty, not a privilege, and no duty gives its holder a license to step outside the law. Following the ruling, an electrical discharge seemed to occur in the courtroom. As prosecutors placed their files into sealed folders, the expression of shock and anger on the faces of the defense attorneys said everything. For them, this was not a defeat, but the weaponization of the system against them. But for the judge, it was the system's self-preservation reflex. Focus now on the sound of the stopwatch. Martinez fixed the trial date exactly 90 days from now. This is sufficient time for federal prosecutors to lay out all the evidence in their hands: secret witnesses, recordings, sealed documents, before the public eye. Delay is no longer an option. There is no escape route left. This ruling also meant an alarm for federal marshals and security units, because as the trial day approaches, it is common knowledge how the tension on the streets of Washington will rise. The court is preparing not just for a legal war, but for a test of public order.
The consequences of this ruling will determine presidential powers for the next 50 years, not just this election period. If Judge Martinez's decision is upheld by the Supreme Court, where, despite the conservative majority, the desire of the judicial institution to protect its own prestige prevails, American presidents will no longer be seen as semi-gods above the law. On the political stage, the situation resembles a wreckage. Imagine an election campaign where a presidential candidate is forced to sit in the defendant's chair in a courtroom 4 days a week. How will this mandatory journey from rally grounds to courthouse corridors resonate with the voters? Furthermore, this ruling serves as a warning shot for Trump's closest allies. Everyone from FBI Director Kash Patel to former White House advisors now knows if their boss is not protected, they cannot be protected at all. By lowering the immunity shield, the federal judiciary has effectively left the entire executive hierarchy exposed. World leaders are also watching this process with bated breath. How will this legal civil war within America affect the superpower's authority in the outside world? With the executive power so shaken, how strong can American diplomacy remain?
The pages are falling from the calendar one by one. 90 days. 2,160 hours. Every footstep echoing on the marble floor of the Washington, D.C. federal courthouse is proof that we are one step closer to that grand finale. The lights in Judge Martinez's chambers continue to burn late into the night. Files are being examined. Objections are being weeded out one by one. This is not a game. This is not political theater. This is the cold-blooded response of the machinery of the state against any power attempting to destroy it. While the wind outside snaps the American flag atop the courthouse, the reality inside is much harsher. The law has begun to speak, and no one will be able to drown out its voice. The trial hour is approaching. When the countdown ends, only the facts will remain. Are you ready?